Kinnock.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The British economy can best be described by the saying, all that glitters is not gold. At first glance, things appear relatively rosy: modest growth, unemployment down, and the moderately stable consumer confidence. But scratched just below the surface and a deeply troubling picture emerges, and it's a story of a productivity crisis, precipitous personal debt, a dangerous over-reliance on financial services, and a gaping chasm between London and the rest of the country. I was therefore pleasantly surprised when the Prime Minister announced her intention, in that fateful speech on the steps of number 10 Downing Street, to develop an industrial strategy. Because wherever you look in the world, the successful countries are the ones in which government has been an active partner of business and industry, using its scale, convening capability, and financial firepower to create long-term platforms for national success. If we are to succeed as a country, we need a Labour vision of government, a government that enables people and businesses to make the most of their talents, a government that is a true and proactive partner with business and industry, a government that is prepared to address the structural weaknesses of the UK economy, a government that is ready to tackle the causes of the malaise rather than simply tinker with the symptoms. And there can be no doubt that the most important single cause of the huge imbalances that afflict our economy is the shrinking of our manufacturing base. In the 1970s, manufacturing accounted for around 30% of our GDP. Today it stands at barely 10%. And the knock-on effects of this decline have been profound. Thanks to the erosion of our manufacturing base, we have seen wealth and resources sucked into the services sector, which has been great for London and the South East and devastating for the rest of the country. We've seen a wholesale shift from production and into consumption. We've seen a catastrophic collapse of our productivity. We've seen a massive increase in our trade deficit. And perhaps most damaging of all for the future of our country and our politics, we've seen a fundamental sense of the communities in our industrial heartlands being left behind. Now, a proper industrial strategy should focus relentlessly on redressing these dangerous and deeply damaging imbalances. A comprehensive, broad-based strategy would spark a modern manufacturing renaissance across the length and breadth of our country. But what we've seen from this government is an approach to industrial strategy that is set to entrench rather than address the imbalances. Rather than commit to a broad-based industrial strategy that supports our foundation industries and puts the foundational building blocks in place for the manufacturing base, our government is instead intent on focusing on going into the stratosphere of space research and life sciences. Research from the Sheffield Hallam Centre for Economic and Social Research has shown that the focus of the government's Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund is on sectors that disproportionately benefit London and the South East. By focusing R&D on an exceptionally narrow range of sectors, healthcare and medicines, robotics and AI, batteries, self-driving vehicles and space tech, we will end up only really benefiting the so-called golden triangle of London, Oxford and Cambridge. Mr. Speaker, this is a blatant and outrageous abdication of the government's responsibilities for the entire economy, not just for those sectors where it may have certain pockets of political support. Exhibit A in the government's failing strategy is its approach to the steel industry. The town I represent is the hub of our steel industry, and the Talbot Steelworks is the beating heart of my community in Aberavon. Last September, so almost 8 months ago now, the government received the Steel Sector Deal, a comprehensive plan for how we can turn the British steel industry from one that is surviving to one that's thriving. It's a plan that would see an additional £1.5 billion of investment across the next 5 years, increasing production by 40%, creating 2,000 more jobs, training 200 more apprentices a year, and increasing investment in R&D. It has the support of companies and unions, but for 8 months it sat on a shelf gathering dust. So I implore the Secretary of State today, confirm when the Steel Sector Deal will be approved, and I urge him to stop treating us like children or idiots. If the government is giving up on the sector deal and on the steel industry, then come clean today and say that from the dispatch box. Mr. Speaker, successful industrial strategy cannot do everything for everyone, but it must do something for everyone. As things stand, this industrial strategy fails that test. So if the government really wants a broad-based industrial strategy, It has to start with a broad-based manufacturing renaissance, and that starts with delivering a sector deal for the steel industry.